Today, we preview the 2025 Kansas City Royals with Jared Perkins of On the Clock podcast and Just Baseball. You're listening to the Bucko Banter podcast, brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue music.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plate, sending case after case. Run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Welcome back to another team preview. Today we have the Kansas City Royals, and we're joined by a colleague of ours at Just Baseball Media, Jared Perkins. Jared, welcome on to Bucko Banter, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Excited to talk the Royals and step away from college baseball for a little bit.
Absolutely. It's that time of the year, man. Spring training's almost done. Opening day is upon us. Let's talk Royals 2024 and the offseason going into 2025. Last year, 86 and 76, big jump, second in the AL Central. Let's go through the additions and the subtractions. Via free agency, they added Carlos Estevez, Michael Lorenzen, Michael Wacha, Cole Reagans was extended, Ross Stripling to a minor league deal, Kevin Biggio to a minor league deal. Via trade, they added Jonathan India early in the offseason and Joey Weimer. And then they lost Yuli Gurriel, Tommy Pham, current Bucko, Will Smith, Robbie Grossman, Garrett Hampson, Paul DeYoung, and then via trade, Brady Singer in that Jonathan India deal. Coming off a good year, how are we feeling about this offseason, and can you give me a grade?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I mean, the grade I gave it was a B. I think if they went out and got a corner outfield bat or something like that, that would have probably pushed it into the A category. But they addressed the biggest need this team needed in the offseason and getting a leadoff hitter in Jonathan India, right? For me, that was the biggest thing all season long. Like, it was a shuffle between Michael Garcia, Michael Massey, Nick Lofton, I think, got some ABs there at one point. Like, they were trying everybody who could get a hit and get the game started in front of Bobby Witt Jr. Now they got a guy who I think last year had over 350 OBP. It's going to hit in front of Bobby Witt Jr. That guy's going to have more RBI opportunities. It's going to take some of the pressure off of Vinny Pasquantino and Salvador Perez behind him. Just having Jonathan India there, I think, is just huge for this team.
Yeah, I mean, this team went from winning 56 games to 86 games. I think it was like a 30-game jump, something like that. That's huge, and that's something we would love to see the Pirates do, but it seems to be more incremental over here in Pittsburgh. Do you think that they, compared to last offseason where they brought in Michael Wacha, where they brought in Seth Lugo, they brought in all these arms, do you think they did enough to make a big enough jump in the AL Central, or is the AL Central just what it is? Like, you can compete with what you have?
Yeah, I don't know if they did enough to make the big jump in the AL Central to be like the team. I think the Guardians are good. The Twins are good. The Tigers even flashed that they have some talent too. And I think the Royals, again, addressed the leadoff position. They got Carlos Estevez in the bullpen, and that was a huge issue for them last year until late in the season when they got Lucas Erceg and Hunter Harvey and a few other guys. But now they're going to have Harvey healthy. They're going to have Erceg. They're going to have Estevez. I mean, that bullpen is going to be pretty electric for them. But I think they needed that big time bat, and they were in on guys like the rumors were that they were in on Jurickson Profar. They were in on Anthony Santander. They were in on these guys and were willing to spend money. I just don't think they were willing to go the fifth year for Santander or give the extra money to Profar, because they just weren't really sold on those guys. And from what I was hearing too, is that they just wanted to make sure they were spending their money correctly and in the right place. And you look at the free agent class in 2025, outside of the big guys, those middle tier guys weren't the best options.
Right. Let's go through the projected lineup here on Fangraphs. Get your opinion on it, or if there's anyone else that can crack this come opening day. At DH, they have Jonathan India listed in the one-hole, shortstop Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny P at first base, Salvador Perez behind the dish, Michael Massey at second, Hunter Renfroe in right, MJ Melendez in left, Michael Garcia at third, and then Kyle Isbell in center. How do we feel about this?
I think it's mostly accurate in terms of the order. The positions, I think, are going to change like crazy for the Royals. I think India's been playing some left field. Massey's been playing some left field. I think they're going to try to figure out who will stick out there. MJ Melendez is likely going to maybe shift over to right field with Renfroe and kind of do some kind of platooning over there. in some ways. But I also think you could see like India try to take some reps at third base as well. And Michael Garcia already this spring has been playing center field because Kyle Isbell, I imagine, will be platooned against lefties. And there's talks that like Michael will play some more center if he can actually hang on out there. So I think like from top to bottom, like that looks correct. Like the order of way which the lineup will go. Maybe they salary dump Hunter Renfroe. That was my dream all offseason, but it didn't happen, unfortunately. Because I'd rather see a combination of like MJ Melendez, Tyler Gentry, Nelson Velasquez, and Joey Weimer out there, and like try to see what those guys can give you. Because I don't know if Hunter Renfroe is really going to give you much more than that.
How about a Jack Caglianone, man? He's been killing it in spring training. Do we see him at some point in Kansas City this year, or is that too rich?
I said it on draft day that I thought Cags was going to make a Wyatt Langford ascend to the big leagues for the Royals. I still kind of stand by that. I think the reason the Royals are playing him in the outfield is because they're trying to find his fastest path to the big leagues. It's why they had him stop pitching, is because they knew the bat is the fastest path for him to the big leagues. And I think he could slot right into right field if he can showcase he can just be even like just slightly below average out there. It's like Hunter Renfroe's not a defensive wizard. MJ Melendez
plays. The arm plays.
Yeah. And it's like MJ Melendez isn't great in left field either. He did improve last year, but that bat is just so good. And I think they're going to try to find a way to get him to the big leagues. I wouldn't be shocked if you saw him by May or June.
How about let's go into the rotation here, Jared. We got Cole Reagan, Seth Lugo, Michael Walker, Michael Lorenzen, and Chris Bubich. Chris Bubich is a guy that was out last year who I'm really excited about, who has a lot of potential. Is this how you think the rotation lines up for opening day, or are there some other guys that you think could crack it?
Yeah, I think this is how the rotation will line up opening day. The issue is I think the reason when they went out and got someone like Estevez is so they didn't need Chris Bubich back in the bullpen because he was absolutely electric back there. And it's kind of hard to take a guy who was just so good in the late innings for them and just have to slide him into the rotation. But I think going to get Lorenzen gave him the depth. Kyle Wright, I think, is starting to throw bullpens already. Yeah. So the hope is that like maybe he can be that fifth guy, and you could shift Bubich back to the bullpen if you're
Lorenzen.
Yeah, you could throw Lorenzen there. And I'd rather do that because I think Bubich's got much more upside as a starter. Before he went down with Tommy John, he was absolutely shoving in the rotation, and he's just got the stuff to do it. But you got your first three locked. So like if you're just deciding on like Kyle Wright, Alec Marsh, Michael Lorenzen for those last two spots, I think you're in a pretty good spot. And then they have guys like Noah Cameron, who's absolutely dominated in AAA, has seen some velo increase this spring. Like they've got depth at the starting rotation spot that they haven't had in the past. So it's great.
What about the bullpen here? You mentioned Carlos Estevez. You got Lucas Ursig, Hunter Harvey, John Schreiber, Angel Zerpa, Chris Stratton, Sam Long, Carlos Hernandez. Anyone in spring that comes to mind that can crack this squad? Bullpen's changing constantly, but how do you feel about this group? And are there any changes come opening day?
Yeah, I think the only way they could really make a big change in the bullpen is if they somehow again like just eat Chris Stratton's salary and release him because he was god awful last year. Yeah. I mean, he was probably the worst reliever outside of Will Smith in that bullpen last year. My sense is they've been just trying to hang on to him to see if there's injuries in a team. All of a sudden, it's like, yeah, we'll take on his like $4 or $5 million or however much he's owed next year and just take a shot at him. I think you could see him getting released at the end of spring unless there's been some massive improvements that I'm not sure of. Carlos Hernandez is the only other way. And I think he's got of options. So you'd have to DFA him to get him off the roster, but he's a guy that throws upper 90s. Like it's hard to just kind of get rid of him. I think they tried to trade him this offseason, just couldn't really find a suitor. So I think the way that you see it right now is kind of how it's going to be. Guys that I'm looking to really kind of push the needle on this rotation is Evan Sisk, who's just added to the 40-man roster. This is a kid that has been drawing rave reviews all spring. Last year, he posted a 1.57 ERA with 81 strikeouts and 57 innings in AAA. a lefty, and I think it's why they were willing to trade a guy like Walter Pennington at the deadline to get Michael Lorenzen from the Rangers, is that Evan Sisk might be better. And I think if they're going to need a lefty out of the bullpen, they would go him. The problem is that they're running into right now is they got a ton of lefties. It's like you got Zerpa, you got Sam Long. If Chris Bubik winds up being in the bullpen, you got another lefty there. So they'd have to try to move some lefty to really give Sisk a shot.
That brings me to my next question. What do they do with Daniel Lynch? He was a former first-round pick out of UVA. I actually saw him throw a pit. We were talking about college baseball beforehand. I saw him throw a pit, and he was a big college arm first-round pick, right?
Yeah.
What is the plan with him going forward?
Man, he was so good out of the bullpen last year, and like the velo ticked up as soon as he was out of there. Yeah, like I think that's where Stratton gets released, and like Daniel Lynch gets that spot. Like that would be where I could see him thriving. I mean, he was in the late innings. He was dominating people. The stuff looked like it did when he was coming out of college again. Like, I think he has to somehow be on this roster. So like a trade of Hernandez or Stratton will need to
This
happen.
is an extreme example, but could he be like an Andrew Miller type?
I could see it. I mean,
stuff plays up in the bullpen.
Yeah, he could
arm.
do like a 2-inning kind of stint. And he's got the stuff to do it. He's got the swing and miss stuff. So I could really see him doing something like that.
Jared, what about some prospects? We mentioned Cags. That's the obvious one.
Yeah.
But anyone that can either contribute this year or you're just looking forward to watching go through the system?
Yeah, I think the main guy that I mentioned was Noah Cameron. He is just a ton of fun. It's kind of a higher floor, lower like ceiling type guy. Because mostly he's been living in the low 90s during most of his career. I think this spring, though, he was up to like 95. So if he can actually sustain that velo increase on his fastball, it's a basically 60 grade curveball, 60 grade changeup, and he's also got a cutter, and he absolutely dots the zone. He just lives in the strike zone, gets guys out, generates a ton of swing and miss. I mean, he was really, really impressive in Omaha last year. Where he posted a 3.08 ERA and he struck out 149 batters in 128 innings. That's the guy I'm probably the most excited about to kind of see. The rest of the guys, unfortunately, of the Royal system are just a lot younger and aren't very close to the big leagues this year. Guy that I would love to see take some steps is Ben Kudrina, who was former top pick for them a couple of years ago, I think in 21 draft. He's made his way to AA. His fastball velocity has gone down since he's been drafted. Like he was coming out of high school just sitting 98 basically. And now he's like maybe 93 to 95. So the slider and the changeup just don't play off of it as well as it used to. But the slider and changeup are above average pitches. And if you can find something with that fastball, like he could be a really good bullpen arm for them too.
Talk about the catcher situation between Carter Jensen and Blake Mitchell. These are two prospect guys. And then also your thoughts on Gavin Cross, who was a first-round pick out of Virginia Tech.
Yeah, so I wound up doing an article on like the Royals' good catching problem that they had. Yeah. It's one of those things where you have Blake Mitchell, who probably has more upside than Carter Jensen, but at this rate, Carter Jensen's been in the minor leagues longer. He's shown that he's going to make him. Yeah, he's performing and he's developed, like taking the development strides you want to see in a prospect. My sense is that defensively, I feel like Blake Mitchell's a little bit better in terms of he's still a little bit raw back there in terms of like framing and those kind of things, but the arm's a 70 grade basically behind the dish. He's got to get some accuracy improvements back there with his throwing arm, but he's just like so good and athletic that I think he's the guy who could like be the long-term catcher replacement for Salvador Perez. Swing and miss issues, like we've seen it in like the 30% strikeout rate that he posted, but it's one of the most beautiful left-handed swings I've seen in the minor leagues. And I just think he's a guy who could really tone that down over the next couple of years. Carter Jensen is a guy I feel like has been talked about in trades, but just hasn't quite made it. I know the Royals made like a big trade package for Jazz Chisholm. My guess was like Carter Jensen was probably the highlight prospect in that deal, especially as you saw like Augustin Ramirez from the Yankees went down for the Marlins. So someone's going to get traded. I just don't know who. And I feel like they won't trade Mitchell unless they get like a top tier type player back. Like I know they were talking to the Angels about Taylor Ward. I can't see them trading Blake Mitchell to get Taylor Ward in. Maybe not even Carter Jensen. So it's just like, then they have Ramon Ramirez, who's in the lower levels of the minors, who's like been in the top 100 list. He was in RM's top 100 list for a while. That dude might have the most upside with his bat compared to the other two. And so you're just like, it's a good problem to have. Someone can be a trade candidate. You can bring in a piece you really need, and maybe you have your future replacement for Salvador.
How about a pick to click, Jared? A guy that you're expecting to break out this year or take this team to the next level.
The guy I picked here, I originally was going to pick Michael Garcia because I thought that since he won't have the pressure of having to hit leadoff anymore, like he could really kind of find his own at the plate. But I wound up going with Michael Massey just because he wound up putting up 102 WRC plus with having a back injury basically all year long. He had 14 home runs, drove in 45 RBIs. If he could stay fully healthy, I think he's the guy who's going to take off. There's like no platoon issues there coming out of the left hand batter's box. Like he's just a guy who is a gamer. He's played Gold Glove defense while he's in the minors, and he's been doing it at the big league level as well. And he absolutely rakes when he's healthy and on. And so like you get that guy hot in the 6 hole, I think he's the guy that they need to really kind of take it to the next level to have success next year.
Jared, what about the biggest what if for this team? Is there anything that you're on the fence about, or something that if it happens, they could be worse off?
Yeah, not solidifying the outfield. That's my biggest concern is like, it's great you have Kyle Isbell who's going to play center field every day, but you know what the bat is, and it's like, it's not great, right? Like he's going to play elite defense in Kaufman, track down everything, but the fact that you have to figure out between Hunter Renfroe, MJ Melendez, Tyler Gentry, Nelson Velasquez, Joey Weimer, and the list goes on of like 4A type outfielders, it's kind of a struggle. That's why I was hoping they would bring in back someone like Tommy Pham at least to help.
You want him?
We'll make a trade.
I'm sure a trade's going to happen with Tommy Pham.
We'll take Carter Jensen.
Yeah, all right? Yeah, we'll throw that one out there, see what happens. But yeah, it's like Drew Waters didn't pan out. And so it's like, you mentioned Gavin Cross, who I forgot to touch on. Like, he's a guy that just hasn't lived up to the hype. Also because of injuries and a lot of swing and miss issues, the bat just wasn't as polished as people thought it was coming out of college. He did play very well in AA, but like the underlying data wasn't great. So like you're just kind of concerned about like what he actually is. So yeah, my concern is the outfield and having options. Like it's like great to have all these 4A depth guys, but if you don't know who's going to be the guy and who's actually going to show up and produce, I worry about that. And that's why I gave the offseason a B, because like I think it's something that needs to be addressed, and maybe they do it in May, June, or at the trade deadline.
How about a 2025 prediction? It could be player oriented or even team oriented. How is this team going to finish? Or, how is a certain player? What is an award a certain player is going to win?
Interesting. I think Vinny Pasquantino will finally break the Royals RBI record.
He was my pick to click.
Yeah.
If he stays healthy.
Yeah. I think he drove in 95 or something with missing like 30 days or something like that. So like he said on a podcast recently too, he's coming from Mike Sweeney's Royals RBI record. And I think he could do it. And he's like, listening to him in that interview, he's like, my mindset is like, how do I drive in runs? He's like, I got to stop grounding into double plays, but he's like, I'm always going to make contact and I'm always going to try to drive and run. So he apparently put like an off-season regimen into place to help with the injury things. Like his big goal is to stay on the field and be 100% for the Royals. He's like, I don't even care if I play 162. I want to be available for 162. So he's the guy that I think is going to break the Royals RBI record this year, especially now having India and Bobby Witt in front of him.
Love that.
Jared, appreciate you coming on. Where can our listeners find your work at? Yeah,
so you can find me at JaredCP1 on X, I guess it is now. All our MLB draft, college baseball stuff is on the Clock 1 on YouTube, and then on Twitter or X as well. Then I do some Royals stuff here and there with Royals Review.
Love that, man. If you're as big of a college baseball fan as I am, definitely check out On the Clock. You guys are awesome. I've listened to every episode. Big fan. Definitely check them out, and then check out the Royals stuff as well. Jared, we'll definitely have to have you on before the draft this year. Appreciate you coming on to preview the Royals, and thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates, or the steak by the plates. And